The untold story of Bellatrix Lestrange, the Black family's darkest star. In the grand tapestry of 12 Grimmauld Place, woven with threads of silver and emerald, there once hung the name of Bellatrix Black before it was burned away by her own mother's trembling hands. Unlike her cousin Sirius, who was disowned for his blood traitor sympathies, Bellatrix's name was scorched from the family tree for an entirely different reason. She had fallen so deeply into darkness that even the already twisted Black family could not claim her. Born into the sacred 28 pure-blood families, Bellatrix was raised in luxury and supremacy. The Black family motto, Jujas per, always pure, was not merely words on a crest, it was a commandment that flowed through her veins like poison. While her younger sister Narcissa would learn to navigate the world with cold calculation, and her cousin Sirius would rebel against everything they stood for, Bellatrix embraced the darkness with a fervor that frightened even her own family. The making of a monster as a young woman at Hogwarts. Bellatrix was not merely a talented witch, she was extraordinary. Her magical abilities set her apart from her peers, and her professors noted with growing unease how she gravitated toward the darkest aspects of magic. While other students struggled with simple hexes, Bellatrix mastered curses that most adult wizards feared to attempt. Her wand chose her with an almost sinister precision. Crafted from walnut wood, it was a wand that demanded respect and rewarded cruelty. Ollivander would later note that walnut wands were particularly suited to those with superior magical insight. But in Bellatrix's case, this insight led her down paths that would have horrified the wandmaker. The marriage to Rodolphus Lestrange was arranged, as was common among pure-blood families, but it was a union of convenience rather than love. Bellatrix's heart, if it could be called that, belonged to something far more dangerous than any man. The devotion that destroyed souls when Tom Riddle returned as Lord Voldemort. Bellatrix found her true calling. Her devotion to him transcended mere loyalty, it became an obsession that bordered on worship. She would kneel before him with tears of joy streaming down her face, her voice trembling with ecstasy as she proclaimed her undying allegiance. This devotion manifested in ways that even other Death Eaters found disturbing. When Voldemort commanded her to torture the Longbourtons for information about his whereabouts, Bellatrix didn't simply obey, she reveled in it. For hours, she subjected Alice and Frank Longbottom to the Cruciatus curse, her laughter echoing through their home as their minds shattered beyond repair. "I'll do anything for you, my lord," she whispered to Voldemort, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Her fellow Death Eaters watched in a mixture of awe and revulsion as she pushed the boundaries of cruelty further than they had ever imagined possible. The secret in the shadows, what the other Death Eaters didn't know, what even Narcissa never suspected, was that Bellatrix's devotion to Voldemort had taken a form that would have shocked even the Dark Lord's most ardent followers. In the shadows of Malfoy Manor, away from prying eyes, Bellatrix bore Voldemort a child, a daughter she named Delphini. The pregnancy was kept secret, hidden by the most powerful concealment charms. Even as her body changed, Bellatrix continued to fight for her master, her magical abilities seemingly enhanced by the dark magic flowing through her veins. The child was born in secrecy and raised in shadows, a living testament to the unholy union between the Dark Lord and his most devoted servant, the one that remembered years later, when Hermione Granger would hold Bellatrix's walnut wand after their escape from Malfoy Manor. She would feel the echo of every curse it had cast, every life it had helped destroy. The wand fought against her, remembering its mistress's touch, remembering the pleasure Bellatrix had taken in causing pain. But perhaps the wand's most terrible memory was not of the curses, or the killing, it was of the gentle way Bellatrix had held it when she carved the word Mudblood into Hermione's arm. The precision of each letter, the careful artistry of the scarification, revealed a level of sadistic creativity that went beyond mere torture. This was Bellatrix's signature, her way of leaving a permanent mark on those who dared to exist in defiance of her beliefs. The cruelty of a true believer. What made Bellatrix truly terrifying was not just her magical power, or her willingness to kill, it was her absolute certainty in her cause. She didn't torture people because she enjoyed Though she did, she tortured them because she believed they deserved it. In her mind, Muggles and Muggle-borns were less than human, blood traitors were worse than animals, and anyone who opposed Voldemort was an enemy of the natural order. This belief system allowed her to commit atrocities with a clear conscience. When she killed Sirius Black, her own cousin, she did so without hesitation or remorse. When she tortured Hermione, she did so with the conviction that she was correcting a cosmic injustice. When she murdered Dobby, she felt only satisfaction at destroying what she saw as an abomination. The duel that ended everything Bellatrix's final moments revealed both her greatest strength and her ultimate weakness, as she dueled Hermione, Luna, and Ginny simultaneously during the Battle of Hogwarts. Her magical prowess was on full display. She was winning, her spells coming faster, and more powerfully than her opponents could counter. But when she nearly killed Ginny Weasley, she awakened something far more dangerous than any Death Eater, a mother's fury. Molly Weasley's killing curse found its mark, not because she was more skilled than Bellatrix, but because her motivation was purer. While Bellatrix fought for ideology and worship, Molly fought for love. In her final moments, as the green light consumed her, Bellatrix's face showed not fear, but confusion. She had been so certain of her superiority, so convinced of her righteousness, that the possibility of defeat had never truly entered her mind. The years in Azkaban, the Dementors of Azkaban, had broken many prisoners, but Bellatrix Lestrange proved to be their most curious challenge. Where others withered and lost their sanity, Bellatrix seemed to feed on her own hatred. The Dementors, creatures that fed on happiness and hope, found little sustenance in her cell. Her devotion to Voldemort burned so fiercely that even the soul-sucking creatures gave her a wide berth. During her 14 years of imprisonment, Bellatrix developed a routine that would have horrified the prison guards had they known. Each morning, she would perform a ritual of remembrance, reciting every detail of her service to the Dark Lord, every moment of their conversations, every gesture of his approval. She carved his name into the stone walls with her fingernails, until they bled, then licked the blood away as if it were communion wine. Other prisoners reported hearing her singing lullabies in the dead of night, not the broken singing of the mad, but clear, melodious songs that she claimed her lord had taught her. The guards dismissed these as delusions, but Bellatrix was indeed singing songs that Voldemort had hummed during their most intimate moments, melodies that would one day lull their secret daughter to sleep. The escape and the reunion when Bellatrix finally escaped from Azkaban in 1996. She didn't run home to her husband or sister. Instead, she spent 3 days in the ruins of the Riddle House, kneeling where she believed Voldemort had once stood, pressing her face to the ground where his feet might have touched. She remained there, fasting and praying in her own twisted way until he finally summoned her. The reunion was everything she had dreamed of during her years in prison. Voldemort, still inhabiting his reconstructed body, received her with something approaching warmth, or what passed for warmth in a being incapable of love. When she fell to her knees before him, tears streaming down her face, he actually reached out and touched her cheek. "My most faithful," he whispered, and in that moment, Bellatrix felt complete for the first time in 14 years. She had endured Azkaban, had kept her sanity through sheer force of devotion, and now she was home, the training of a killer. What the other Death Eaters never understood was that Bellatrix's cruelty was not random. It was cultivated. Voldemort had personally trained her in the art of torture, teaching her that pain was not just a means to an end, but an art form in itself. Under his tutelage, she learned to read her victims' faces, to understand exactly how much agony they could endure before breaking. She practiced on captured Muggles in the depths of abandoned warehouses, perfecting her technique while Voldemort watched with something like pride. He taught her that the Cruciator's curse was not merely about causing pain, it was about dominating another being so completely that they lost all sense of self. Watch their eyes. Voldemort would instruct her. The moment they stop fighting, the moment they accept their helplessness, that is when you have truly won. Bellatrix became his most apt pupil, surpassing even his expectations. She learned to maintain the Cruciator's curse for hours without tiring, to vary the intensity with surgical precision, to make her victims beg for death while ensuring they remained conscious to experience every second of their torment. The Sisterhood of Shadows, the relationship between Bellatrix and Narcissa was far more complex than the movies portrayed. While Narcissa was the calculating one, the strategist who played politics with deadly precision, Bellatrix was the true believer, the one who would charge into battle without question. Yet despite their different approaches, they shared a bond forged in the crucible of their upbringing. Narcissa knew about Delphini long before anyone else. She had been the one to assist with the birth, to cast the concealment charms, to ensure that no one would ever discover the Dark Lord's most dangerous secret. The sisters had an unspoken agreement. Narcissa would protect Bellatrix's secret, and Bellatrix would die before she let anyone harm Narcissa's son. When Narcissa lied to Voldemort about Harry Potter's death in the Forbidden Forest, she did so, knowing that Bellatrix would never forgive her if she learned the truth. It was perhaps the only time in her life that the calculating Narcissa acted purely on emotion, choosing her son over her sister's unwavering loyalty to their master. The art of dark magic. Bellatrix's magical abilities extended far beyond the unforgivable curses. She was a master of dark arts that most wizards had never heard of, spells that existed in the shadowy corners of magical knowledge. She could cast curses that would make a person's bones feel like they were made of glass, jinxes that would cause someone to relive their worst memories in an endless loop, and hexes that would slowly drain the life force from her victims over days or weeks. Her signature spell, Beyond the Cruciator's Curse, was a modification of the Imperious Curse that she had developed herself. Instead of controlling her victims' actions, she could control their emotions, forcing them to feel whatever she desired. She could make them experience the terror of a drowning man, the despair of a grieving parent, or the agony of heartbreak, all while they remained fully conscious and aware that these feelings were not their own. This emotional manipulation was perhaps her cruelest innovation. Physical pain eventually ended, but the psychological scars of having your emotions violated, of being forced to feel things that weren't yours, lasted forever. The mother's secret, the birth of Delphini, was perhaps the only time in Bellatrix's life when she experienced something approaching maternal love. But even this was twisted through the lens of her devotion to Voldemort. She didn't love her daughter as a mother should. She loved her as a living extension of her master, a physical manifestation of their unholy union. She would whisper to the baby about her father's greatness, about the destiny that awaited her, about the world they would create together. Delphini's first words were not Mama or Dada, but My Lord, taught to her by a mother who saw her own child as a vessel for her master's will. Bellatrix raised her daughter to be a weapon, just as she herself had been raised to be a tool of pure blood supremacy. She taught her the dark arts from the moment she could hold a wand, instilled in her the same fanatical devotion that had defined her own life, and prepared her for a future where she would continue her father's work. The collector of screams among the Death Eaters, Bellatrix was known for her macabre collection. In her private chambers at Malfoy Manor, she kept bottles filled with what she called essence of agony, magically preserved sounds of her victims' screams, their pleas for mercy, their final words. She would listen to these recordings like others might listen to music, each one a treasured memory of a life destroyed in service to her master. She had a particular fondness for the screams of children, claiming they were purer than those of adults. When she tortured Hermione at Malfoy Manor, she was not just extracting information, she was adding to her collection, savoring every sob and whimper as if they were precious gems. This collection was discovered after her death. Dozens of bottles lined up on shelves like a grotesque library of human suffering. The Aurors who found them reported that even listening to them for a few seconds was enough to give them nightmares. For weeks, the final betrayal in her last moments, as Molly Weasley's killing curse raced toward her, Bellatrix experienced something she had never felt before: doubt. For a split second, she wondered if she had been wrong, if all the pain she had caused, all the lives she had destroyed, had been for nothing. But the doubt lasted only a moment. As the green light consumed her, her final thought was not of regret, but of anticipation. She believed with absolute certainty that death was merely a transition, that she would be reunited with her master in whatever realm awaited them. She died with his name on her lips, a smile on her face, and the absolute conviction that she had lived and died in service to the greatest wizard who had ever lived. The legacy of darkness Bellatrix Lestrange died, as she had lived absolutely certain that she was right, and everyone else was wrong. She left behind a legacy of terror, a daughter raised in secrecy, and a scar on the wizarding world that would take generations to heal. Her name became synonymous with fanaticism and cruelty, a cautionary tale about what happens when brilliance is perverted by absolute belief. But perhaps her most chilling legacy was this: she had shown the wizarding world that evil didn't always come from desperation or madness. Sometimes it came from conviction, from the terrifying certainty that some people were simply worth more than others. In a world where magic could accomplish wonders, Bellatrix Lestrange had used her gifts to remind everyone that the darkest magic of all was the magic of hate. Even in death, her influence lingered. Her daughter Delphini would grow up to become a threat that even Harry Potter would struggle to face, carrying forward her mother's twisted legacy and her father's dark ambitions. The child born of pure evil would prove that some poisons run deeper than blood, that some darkness passes from generation to generation like a curse that can never be fully broken. And in the quiet moments when the wizarding world thought itself safe, when the name Voldemort was finally spoken without fear, some still whispered the name Bellatrix Lestrange, remembering the woman who had shown them that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who believes with absolute certainty that they are saving the world.